What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over the mobility items in Fortnite Chapter 4 and explaining which one I think is best. If you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below what your favorite mobility item is in Fortnite Chapter 4 right now. So, before we get into these items, I'm mainly going to be talking about the Shockwave hammer, the Shockwave bow, and the Nimbus cloud. I feel like these are the top tier mobility items in the game right now. The grapple bow is there, and it is good. I do have a video about that I made last week, but I don't think it is like on the same level as some of these other mobility items. And the items I just mentioned, the Shockwave hammer, the Shockwave bow, and the Nimbus cloud, are all incredible mobility items. There is no bad choice. So when I say which one I think is best later on in the video, it's not that the other ones are bad. They all kind of have their own strengths and weaknesses, but I feel like if you were to make a tier list of Fortnite mobility items, all of these items would be like S+. It would probably be these three, and the Shockwave launcher is like the best mobility items ever, and maybe the grapple gloves. So yeah, it's not that any of these are bad choices. So we're going to start off with the Shockwave hammer. I feel like this one is the one that most players are most familiar with because it is the easiest to get of these options, I feel like. It's also the easiest to use. It's really convenient because you can just get it from looting. And if you land at an area that has a lot of Oathbound chests, more often than not, you're going to get this item. With the Oathbound chest loot pool expanding, it does become more inconvenient to get it. But you can get it just from looting. You can get it from Oathbound chests. It's used a bunch, so if you are able to kill people, probably you're going to get one off of one of their bodies. And there is an NPC that sells it near the middle of the map for 250 gold, which I think is a very, very, very fair price for this Shockwave hammer. Whenever I've talked about this in the past, people are like, yeah, that's expensive, but you probably spend more than 200 gold a game re-rolling augments to get like light fingers and reload your weapon faster, which is nice, but I feel like the impact the Shockwave hammer has is more than that. So yeah, 250 gold to buy it from that NPC I don't think is bad at all, and I do have a video about farming gold, which will get you max gold very quickly. Gold really isn't something I care about at this point in time. It's very easy to get. So the Shockwave hammer is probably the easiest to get out of these mobility items, and I also think it's probably the easiest to use. It's between this and the Nimbus cloud, but one thing the hammer has going for it, which is nice, is that it recharges and has 3 charges, whereas the Nimbus cloud only has 1. So it's a little more forgiving if you use one of your charges and don't get the most out of it. But it's essentially a Shockwave grenade that you can activate in a single button click. You don't have to worry about throwing it and positioning your character in relation to it. You just tap the dash button and you're out of there. It's very, very, very good, and I feel like most people at this point in time are familiar with the Shockwave hammer. The hammer smash does exist, but I pretty much don't use this ever. I don't think it's very good at all. It's very coin flippy. If it comes down to it in a fight, you're basically deciding, like, I'm going to try to win the fight off of this, or I'm just going to lose my game. Pretty much the only time I use the Shockwave hammer's smash ability is if I like tag someone who goes into a bush or something like that. So if I have early damage on someone who goes into a bush, we can hammer dash onto them, knock them out of bush, and then we're probably going to be able to finish that kill. But even then, that usually isn't the cleanest play because of how much you get tagged when going for the hammer smash, and if you do miss it, you're probably going to lose the game. The Shockwave bow is incredibly good. I think the ceiling on the Shockwave bow is probably the highest out of all of these mobility items, but it's kind of inconvenient in some ways. It's inconvenient to get because you have to get it from an augment, and then you definitely want the bow specialist augment. And then a lot of people like soaring sprints with the bow as well. I'm not a fan of the soaring sprints augment because I don't like when it just makes me like soaring sprints jump when I just want to like sprint jump, but a lot of people like soaring sprints. So if you're going for that setup, that's 3 of your augments, and you only have 4. You maybe could get like your teammate to get the bow augment and give it to you, but either way, 2 to 3 augments have to be invested to make the Shockwave bow like setup that you want, depending on whether or not you want soaring sprints. And that is a lot. It's funny to see players talk about how much gold it is to buy a hammer for 250 gold, and then they'll sit there re-roll augments all day trying to get like bow specialist, soaring sprint, Shockwave bow. When I was getting gameplay of the grapple bow, trying to get bow specialist was a pain, and if you get lucky and you just get it every time super easily, that's awesome. But as more and more augments get added to the game, seemingly every week, update by update, it's going to be more inconvenient to get the exact augments you want, just as we were talking about before with more items being added to the Oathbound loot pool, making it harder to get hammers. So the Shockwave bow is inconvenient to get for that regard. You're going to waste a lot of gold going for those augments. And then also you deny yourself the ability to use other augments because you need that setup. You know, if you're using 3 augments on the bow, you have one more augment. Maybe that's Storm Mark, maybe that's Forecast. Splash Medic is great. Bush Heal, I think, is incredibly good. It's just convenient to have because then you don't have to waste heals sometimes. Pistol Amp is nice. Light Fingers is nice. The Mythic Pistol is nice. There's a lot of very, very, very good augments in the game right now. Zero Chance is great. And so while the bow is amazing, denying yourself the ability to get those other augments is a drawback that is worth being considered. And then it's also, of these mobility items, it's the most inconvenient to use, especially if you don't have bow specialist. It gets a lot better if you have bow specialist, but basically with this bow, you have to pull the arrow to a certain amount before it gets the shockwave effect. And not only does that take time, I've had people tell me it's the same as the hammer dash, but the thing about the hammer dash is you tap the button and then you go. Even if it's the same time with the shockwave bow, you are in control of it. So like if you ever mess that up, you're probably going to lose the game off of it. And it is just something to be more concerned about in a fight. I'll have a clip here of me pushing somebody. I end up getting the elim, and then a player hammers us off this mountain, and we were already weak to begin with. It's not a good fight whatsoever for me. And I'm playing behind this tree, and we do eventually kill this player, but I felt very limited here because I did not have the Shockwave Hammer, and I had the bow instead. If I had the Shockwave Hammer, I probably would have just hammered to a different tree and tried to get some heals off maybe. But with the bow, I didn't feel confident getting the arrow drawn and getting away before he got to me. So I just had to fight him with minimal HP. I ended up getting the kill, but this was not a good situation whatsoever. But the main thing about the bow, which is great, is that with bow specialist, you basically have 31 shockwaves all the time because you regenerate arrows, and you can spam them incredibly fast. The shockwave hammer has 3 and then cooldown. The Nimbus Cloud has 1 and then cooldown, whereas this bow, you can have 31 arrows, and you will keep regenerating them over time. And if you ever get any kills, you're probably going to get max arrows off those kills because a lot of players just don't even use the arrows at all. And then the bow can also just be used as a weapon. You can shoot people with it, which I don't really try to do. I feel like more often than not, if I shoot somebody with the shockwave bow and then knock them to who knows where, I probably would have just got more damage shooting them with the red eye assault rifle. But what is great about the shockwave bow is you can use it to move them around. And in zero build, this is incredibly overpowered because cover is super important. If you get opening tags on somebody and then they go behind a rock or something and then you just shockwave them from that rock out into the middle of nowhere or the open, that's a free kill. If you have someone playing high ground or a mountain or something like that, you can shockwave them off of it in the same way you could with shockwave grenades. And there's a lot of just very inconvenient situations that using the shockwave bow will bail you out of. I'll have a clip here of a game. It's a 1v1v1. These players aren't that great, but I'm pinched between them, which is not good at all. But what I end up doing is just shockwave bowing one of them into Storm so I can fight the other and then hopefully deal with that other guy when he gets back in his zone. The player that I shockwaved into Storm ended up dying, but even if they didn't die, we would have gotten some alone time with the other player and been able to eliminate them and then just basically have 2 isolated 1v1s rather than a situation where I'm stuck between 2 players. So being able to move people around with the shockwave bow is incredibly good in zero build because of how important cover is and how important positioning is. And also it just puts a lot of pressure on your opponent and forces them into an awkward scenario. So the shockwave bow is great. I think it's the highest skill ceiling weapon or mobility item in the game right now. It's like the most inconvenient to use, but if you are good with it, it's incredibly good. It's just inconvenient to use and pretty demanding as far as augments go. The final one is going to be the Nimbus Cloud, and this is kind of weird because I think it's great for getting around the map, but it's definitely more limited than other mobility items for just repositioning in a fight because it has 1 use and then a cooldown. And the Shockwave Hammer also has a cooldown period, but you get 3 uses per cooldown. And you probably aren't going to go as far with a single Shockwave Hammer use as you could the Nimbus Cloud. But that's why I was saying the Nimbus Cloud is better for getting around the map, but not as much repositioning in fights. And I think that like repositioning in fights aspect of the mobility items is very important this season because of how good all of these items are. A lot of players are just spamming mobility in fights, and if you don't have mobility to catch up to them or you don't have mobility to reposition off of them using mobility and kind of changing the fight up, it's going to be very inconvenient for you to play the game. So the Nimbus Cloud, while it's great, it's not really what I want to use this season. The only time I would really ever use this is if for some reason I wanted to run double mobility, like maybe you run Nimbus Cloud and Hammer and then use the Nimbus Cloud for getting around the map and then you use the Hammer for just like when you're in a fight. I think that could be good. But of these 3 options, the Nimbus Cloud is my least favorite. I'll definitely take it if I'm having a hard time getting the hammer or the bow. Basically, the way I look at the mobility in the game right now is I want the hammer. It's my favorite choice. But if we're having a hard time getting the hammer for whatever reason, then maybe I'll roll augments for the Shockwave bow. Maybe I'll check vending machines for the Nimbus cloud. Or maybe I'll just see if there's a capsule on the map nearby. And then we can use one of those other options until I get the hammer. Usually, if I'm already on the bow path and I have like the bow and bow specialist, I'll just stick with it. But I think the Nimbus cloud is a great option for mobility until you're able to get your hands on something better. That's just kind of how I feel about it at this point. If you've played a lot in Chapter 4, I'm sure you're aware of like how every fight is pretty much someone just kind of hammering until they're out of charges. And if you use your cloud to like open the fight, and then it's on cooldown while the person just runs from you or repositions in some way, I just don't think it's that great. So, yeah, that's how I feel about the cloud. It's the easiest to get, though. You can look on the map, you can see a capsule, and you can go there and you can get your mobility item, which is nice. And then it also is for sale in vending machines for, I think, 250 gold. It's just random whether or not a vending machine spawns the cloud or not, or whether it spawns as a Dragon Ball vending. But it's worth checking if you are having a hard time getting mobility items. One final thing about the Nimbus cloud is I've seen a lot of people praising it for being quiet, and that's why they like it, which is true. But I'll have this clip on screen now of someone, I can't hear their Nimbus glider at all, but they're showing on visual audio regardless. So I go and open this drop, and I know this player is like pushing me and that they think I'm going to be a free kill for them while I'm opening the drop, and then we just turn and get the elim. So if you're using visual audio, you don't really have to worry about that quiet aspect of the Nimbus glider. And in higher skill lobbies, I feel like more often than not, like over half the players are using visual audio. It's a very popular setting, and a lot of players like to use it. So while the Nimbus glider is quiet, it's not going to counter visual audio. And a lot of people use visual audio, and a lot of good players use visual audio. So odds are the people who actually matter in the lobby you're playing are using visuals. So that is my thoughts on the mobility. I think for most people, the hammer is going to be the best. The Shockwave bow is incredibly good, and it has a very high ceiling, but I also feel like it has a lower floor than the hammer because it needs augments to be like its best version of itself, and it's just more inconvenient to use if you're ever nervous in fights, or if you ever mess up shooting that arrow, or you just don't have another arrow drawn when you swap to it. There's just a lot of things that could potentially go wrong with the bow, whereas the hammer, as you swap to it, you tap the button and you're out of there. But that's my thoughts on it. Let me know down in the comments below which item is your favorite. Like I said earlier on, I don't think there is a bad choice. All of these items are great, and if the other items were removed, we would still have like incredible mobility, you know? Take the hammer and the bow out. If the Nimbus cloud is still in the game, we still have like an S tier mobility item, so there's no terrible choice. I just feel like some are slightly better or slightly more convenient to use than others. But I hope you guys found this video helpful and informative. If you did, give it a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.